webinar on how to cut the budget on Google Ads with a minimal effect on your revenue. And let's share my screen and we can start. So the background is that I speak to a lot of e-commerce entrepreneurs and I meet a lot of people that ask this question right now. So how do we actually make sure that we can cut budget efficiently and do it with a limited effect on our revenue? So we decided to do a webinar just on this topic and dig really into the details on this topic. And to answer these questions, I decided to invite two of the most senior people I know within this space. Both have almost 10 years of experience from digital marketing, worked with many global companies within e-commerce, and they both used to work at Google. So I'm super happy to welcome Andre and Morten. So Andre, please tell us a bit more about your background.
I also made an extra effort to go with the no internet t-shirt today, just to make sure you get the real thing.
Which that
yes,
so everyone see, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's still the same. So whatever was promised in this webinar will be present. The dinosaur and a few hints and tips on how to cut the budget. So stay tuned, please.
Amazing. And Morten,
yes.
welcome to you.
Thank you. Good to be here. Good to be here. Yes, and yeah, I work with Andre and with Jonas in Keywordeo, and yeah, the company is 6 years old, and we started it because we saw that there's a big opportunity using software to help optimize clients' ads account. So yeah, we decided to do that.
Great. So if we dig into the presentation that we have prepared for today, the agenda looks like this. So I will start giving a general high-level introduction to the challenge that we typically see when clients have multiple channels and a big complex setup of how you distribute the marketing budget. Then Morten, you will dig some more into the details about why it is important to consider this when you're cutting the budget in Google Ads. And Andre will then end up more close on the details and really what should you consider in Google Ads really and give us some really great examples to look at it. So depending on the role you have, you will probably find it most interesting if you are like a CMO or a CEO on the first part, and then of course if you really like the details, then Morten and Andre's section will be great. And if you're more a person that actually spends a lot of time in Google Ads yourself, you will probably get more out of the section from Morten and from Andre. And in the end, we will do a Q&A and answer some specific questions regarding this as well. So what do we see as the challenge with cutting the budget smart when you have multiple channels? So it's really digital transformation is all around, right? And if you look at it this way, you know, people sit around and talk about what you should change to make sure that you transform faster and that you make sure that you do everything that is needed. But what we really see right now is that, well, COVID-19 is just coming on as a cannonball from the side, and it's really going to accelerate this for a lot of companies. So what would that really mean for us going forward? This is an interesting graph over the last 10 years from US e-commerce penetration for the retail. So typically it took from 29 to 2019 to go from 5.6 to 16% of penetration for the e-commerce market. It took 8 weeks to go all the way up to 27%. So that's extremely fast compared to the trend that we have seen prior to this. And of course, COVID-19 really changed everything for a lot of people. but it's going to be a lot of patterns that definitely going to be staying in this new way of living and working and doing business going forward as well. So it's a dramatic shift that we see right now, and it will probably lead to a lot more sales on online after this as well.
Wow.
So how do you cut your budget if this is the mix you have? So if you have a really complex setup, you maybe run your paid social, you run your different affiliate programs, you have influencer marketing programs. Of course, you have your email setup, TV, print, and all of that. It's really complex to know, okay, your manager comes into you in your office and says, okay, you need to cut your budget by 30% today. What do you actually do then? One question that you could start asking yourself is really, what happens if I lower the spend with 10% of one of these channels? What's the impact going to be on my sales? And there's a really interesting study coming from Boston Consulting Group about marketing measurements done right. And they have visited some of the most advanced companies, and they have done deep interviews with the CMOs on these companies. And there's only 9% of them who can accurately, precisely forecast the impact on return on investment if they shift the marketing spend with 10%. And this is from a group of companies that are, really on a high level in terms of how they run digital marketing. So assume if you look at this going on for companies within e-commerce, small and medium segment, for example, the number will be a lot lower and it will be a lot more complex to see. So there's a lot to do in this area. And what we typically do is that we try to think about two effects. So of course, for each channel, we look into the return on investment, but we also look into the delayed effect. So for example, if we are here and we are investing in TV, for example, in early on, it's an awareness phase for the customer, right? How long time will it take until somebody who's seen a TV ad will buy something? Compared to if you're running into a price comparison site, typically comparison like consideration phase, the customer considered to buy something from your store. Or if they just go in and find, okay, I want to buy my black Nike Air shoes size 43, super specific, want to buy. That's going to be a quite short effect, right? So looking at that and estimating the return on investment and the delayed effect is really important. How you think about how the budget is distributed. So there are typically two big methods or ways of doing this. The first one is that, for example, if you run your marketing mix modeling, that means that you get data from all your different channels. So, for example, if you do events or TV or what channel you are using, and then you make a statistical analysis and try to forecast the behavior, where you also can estimate the return on investment and the delayed effect. So this is a pretty channel-focused approach. But many companies who run this also realize that, yeah, but we don't really have the customer focus here. So then you look into what is called the multi-touch attribution, where you try to take a more of a customer-centric approach. So, for example, what were the touch points for the customer before they bought something for us? Did it start with a TV ad, or did it start with an ad on YouTube, and then try to make an analysis of that, and then estimates the impact along the way. So these two ways of doing it is typically the way to do it. But if you don't have this in place, you can still work a lot with doing the estimates on where they are in the channel and the customer journey that I showed you earlier. So consider return on ad spend and timeline. That's the key things. And like we said, for example, typical awareness phase, that is maybe Facebook, YouTube, influencer marketing, typically consideration phase for the customers, that's price comparison, maybe organic search, and close to the purchase, that is where you're in the end when it's paid search and shopping. So different scenarios of cutting the budget. So for example, you have the case here, you spend on Google, and let's say that you just simplify, you spend on TV as well. So when your manager comes in and say, hey, I want to cut the budget with, you need to cut the budget with 30%. Do you cut 30% on all channels with a fixed way of doing it? Or do you cut like, 10% on the channels that have short-term effect, for example? Could be a way, an adaptive approach to look at it. What we really see is important here is that none of these models will solve this in an efficient way. You really need to look into what we call the Swiss cheese model, and that is to be super exact about how you are managing your budget. And typically in a channel like Google Ads, that is very, very complex, and that you really need to look into the details. So many of the Google Ads accounts that we work with today, they have tens of thousands different parameters that needs to be evaluated to look into together. So going in and say, okay, let's cut 10% here, it's going to be a lot of work to go into the details and really understand to make sure that you cut with the limited effect of revenue. So this is what Morten and Andre will share more about. So with that, I would like to hand over the word to Morten.
Thank you. And let me see here. Everybody should see my screen now. Yeah, let's see, Jonas, if you can, patent pending that Swiss cheese model for Keywordeo. So Jonas just gave a very good overview of, first of all, the change that is already here within e-commerce, at least. Also, he gave a very good introduction to, cutting budget is not that easy. Do you cut it on Google Ads? Do you do it on TV? Do you do it on Facebook? There's all these different phases like awareness or consideration, and then in the end, of course, direct response or purchase, which is typically the lower end of the funnel, we call it. But let's take, of course, we need to keep this a bit simplified, but we'll do some assumptions. So we will now dig into Google Ads, which is, some of it you could say you can do Google Ads for awareness, but I would argue that most of the people on this call are probably using Google Ads in the latter stages, so the lower end of the funnel. For example, Google Shopping is a great example of that. That is not so much to drive awareness, but more to drive, purchases, right? You see an image of the product, you see the price, you see the link, and you see the title and all sorts of things. And also it has the most prominent space on the Google search results. So it's a very good place to be. So let's cut in, or let's start, and let's assume that we want to, cut budgets because of, it could be COVID-19, it could be that your company doesn't have as much growth, and we see this all the time, and we're trying to help our clients to see, how do we do this best, and we actually manage to get some great results, even when people want to cut budgets. It's actually quite impressive. So let's start. So let's imagine that your manager or you as a CEO wants to cut 30% of the budget, right? What you can do is you can look at the different graphs, and let's imagine that, on this axis we have ROAS, and then on this axis we have campaigns, right? So campaign 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Campaign 1 could be Nike sneakers. Campaign 2 could be Nike Air Max sneakers. Campaign 3 could be Nike sweaters, and so forth. Okay. So of course, campaign 5 and campaign 2 are doing quite well in terms of ROAS, and campaign 4 and campaign 2 is not doing super well, right? So of course, you could say, okay, if I need to cut 30%, I could just take 30% here, or I could take 20% here and 10% here, right? And that's of course, I would say based on this assumption or based on this amount of data, that is probably what you should do. And then of course, we have a webinar, and the reason why is because we don't believe that it's that simple. why is it not that simple? Well, let's say these are the campaign 1, 2, and 3 from before. So, you know, Nike sneakers, Nike Air Max shoes, and then Nike sweaters, I believe it was, right? So let's say under Nike sweaters, we have identified that, let's say that was the campaign we wanted to cut. I think before the campaign 4 was worse, but in any case, let's just take campaign 3 and then kind of maximize that. So that, of course, entails, let's say, 25 keywords. It could also be 250, or it could be 500 keywords, right? The thing is that this has a return on investment, let's say 500% or 5 times your money back. But underneath there's keywords. So it could be that 5 of them are doing really great, right? And, you know, 5 of them are doing okay, 10 of them are doing poor, and 5 of them are doing terrible, right? And we could even say it's a Google Shopping campaign over here with the image and the price, and then even a price drop you can also have. But the thing is that if it is a search campaign, then it will have keywords. If it's a shopping campaign, you could have 5 products instead of keywords, but essentially it's the same. Yeah. So let's say then, okay, but then maybe you should actually not cut these 5 keywords. But yeah, these 5 keywords could actually not help you grow your revenue, right? They are a big cost factor, but they are not contributing that much to the revenue. But again, let's take it one step further. So these 5 keywords, they were all terrible. However, it could be that from these keywords, and of course, you know, you need quite a lot of data to see this, but it could be that one of these keywords did really well on Mondays, you know, from a mobile phone in London from a woman who is a returning visitor, right? However, if you're from, let's say, Southampton or wherever, and you're coming from a desktop or a tablet, and you're a new user, meaning you've never been to the website before, and you're doing it on a Friday where maybe you should have actually been at the pub, then the return on investment can be really bad. So if we go back to here, you know, we have one campaign, and you know, it could be campaign 4, it's not doing really well. However, there are keywords underneath that campaign that is doing great, and of course, opposite, there are some that are doing worse. And also, even if they're doing worse, right, it could be that some subsections of them are doing really well, right? So it's just to show that this may not be the best idea. This, I think, is a much better idea. And if you have time and let's say the competencies for it, we think that this is even better. And again, some of the, let's say, the small things that we've seen, typically from like 1 in the morning until 5 or 6 in the morning, tends to not be the best day. If you're in e-commerce, you know, check out your days of the week. We see Mondays being the best and Fridays being the worst, but of course it depends on the company. We see mobile extremely crazy high growth. However, during the COVID-19, we see a lot of searches and actually conversions from iPads and tablets, and we believe it's because people are more at home. But you know, that's an asterisk disclaimer from Keywordio. And of course, your returning visitors will do better than new visitors. And of course, if you are slashing budgets and you are, you know, cutting away costs, then if you only focus on returning visitors, you won't grow your account, so to speak. But in this case, we are under the assumption that you need to cut costs. And in that case, you know, new visitors may be too costly for you. But just so you know, if you keep doing that over time, you will, you know, limit your piece of the pie, so to speak. So yeah, that was a little bit, you know, more into detail. With that, I would like to introduce Andre, or not introduce, he's already been introduced, but Andre will take it from here.
Thank you very much, Morten. And I'm going to present my screen and show you a few of my slides as well. All right.
Did you make them off the internet? Or no internet?
No. I think it's the only place that lacks internet is my t-shirt here, so that should be okay. Right. So I'm going to take it a bit further down the optimization route here and show you a few examples which are taken from the real accounts of how you can cut the budget smart, but also how to ramp them up again, just to get a bit of a positivity going on. We do hope the life will get back to normal, or to the new normal, as the saying goes these days, and you will get your budgets back and will have an opportunity to start spending more. Right, but first, as you probably heard a few times during this webinar already, we talk a lot about ROAS, which is a return on advertising spend. And as Morten pointed out, this is the amount of money you get back for the amount that you put in, be it euro, SEK, yen, or whatever currency you have. It's a very helpful metric to use, and I am pretty sure you are already using that. But it can also be a cheeky metric and a little bit misleading as well. And I'm going to look into that in more detail. You do have to go into a fair amount of detail, go beyond channel, beyond account, beyond campaign, and drill down into the keyword level, just like Morten demonstrated. Maybe have a look at your ad copy as well. Or if you are running, well, maybe not or, but and if you're running Google Shopping, then you gotta focus on the product level there as well. And I'm gonna show you why that is important and how we at Keywordeo do that. Why it's necessary to do? Because sometimes, even if you're using the best logic ever, the numbers can be a little bit misleading and they might portray you the picture that is not going to get you anywhere. And again, I will have an example of that. And lastly, you have to consider the impact. Even if the numbers are in good order and you've utilized all the best logic possible, they might just not deliver enough to keep you going, and we don't want that. So I will focus a little bit more on Google Shopping because, as Morten pointed out, it is a very prominent product and it takes a lot of space. It features your images, descriptions, prices, all very conveniently, and it is taking more and more share of the total budgets and revenues that Google delivers. So let's have a look into this slide from a real life advertiser. You might want to go with a simple approach of thinking, all right, I just want to make sure that I get the highest ROAS possible from my products. And it's a very legit approach. So you have a look at your historical performance, you sort by ROAS, you get all these fantastic numbers in like a ROAS of 492. Great. And you think, if I just get with these things going, I should be okay. But you also see that this one only had 5 clicks. Is this really enough to make a well-informed decision? Probably not. So what we advertise and what we promote is more of a bucket approach. And by bucket, I mean, if you have a capability to sort your products into different profitability buckets, you should totally do that. Here in this example, we kind of illustrate different shoe types. And if you're selling shoes, I'm pretty sure you know that your sneakers would have a profitability of X, your city shoes would have profitability of Y, and your runners would have a profitability of Z. It's one of the ways to look at your portfolio and think of what should I be focusing on when I cannot focus on everything. And obviously, you have to, if you've cut the budgets before and now you arrived at the stage when you can start enabling them back on, you should go with a kind of waterfall approach and start where you get the best ROAS first. It makes sense. You want to give the money to the channel, which is going to give you, or a product, which is going to give you the most back. Perfectly fine, perfectly logical, but it has to be working for you too. And one of the fallbacks that we see fairly often is that people don't estimate the impact on the revenue that they're going to have if they just stick to this. So let's go to our buckets example. And this is not from the real account. This is just our lovely buckets here. And the liquid in those buckets represents your revenue. This is a pretty natural distribution that your most profitable things, they deliver fantastic results and they give you the best bang for your buck, but they only amount to as much revenue, not that much, to be honest. So you have to be very careful with this. And one of the examples from the real account here, like if you say, here are my products that I would like to switch back on after the tough times are over and I have a little bit more cash lying around, I am going to go for very strong ROAS of 12 and hope for the best. But what is important here is that these ROAS and these products would only give you less than 30% of your total revenue that you were expecting when every other bucket was also enabled. And if you can live with that, that is great. But you gotta have a long, hard look at your finances and ask yourself a pretty tough question. Is this 29% going to be enough to pay the salaries? Is it going to be enough to pay my salary? Is it going to be enough to pay the suppliers, to get the rent, to get the returns taken care of, and to settle all the expenses that you inevitably incur by running your business? And if the answer to that is no, then you're gonna enable the different less profitable bucket back into your revenue stream. Just to reiterate, it might be super tempting just going for the best ever sellers, but if your revenue stream runs dry, then it's probably not the best idea for your business. And we obviously want everybody to succeed here. One last thing that I would like to mention here is something that is available to everybody, because previously I mentioned a few things which require some technical implementations, such as breaking the feed, your product feed down in the product level, and then enable or disable particular products. It can be a little bit tricky, and we have technology to do that. You can see the data in a merchant center if you dig deep enough, but you can't always make changes based on that merchant center data. If you're interested in knowing how to transfer that into actionable campaign breakdown, please reach out to us. We can show you a few of our tricks and take the conversation further. But what is available to everybody here who has Google Analytics account, and I do hope everybody has it, is a conversion probability feature, which they have rolled out a few months ago, but a surprisingly few advertisers make good use of it. So what it does is it calculates a probability of a particular user converting in the next 30 days. And what you can do with this, you can build segments in analytics and then feed them into your Google Ads account and see if there's any percent of your audience that you really can't afford these days. You know, if somebody has a conversion probability of less than 5%, maybe you shouldn't be showing your ads to them at all, because they will just end up too expensive. Interestingly enough, from the early days of online marketing, we've also been told that cart abandoners are your pretty much El Dorado. These are the people that you need to reach out to. They have almost converted, they've forgotten something in their shopping basket, or they just left it there because they got sidetracked, whatever. These are the people that have the best conversion rates. You need to go after them as much as you can. And it turns out, if you make a good use out of conversion probability segments, then, like in this particular example, they are actually underperforming a little bit. There are other things there that you can set up in 5 minutes and make very good use of that. So if there's one thing that you can do today without the technical implementations and going crazy with data analysis, is going into your Google Analytics, setting these things up, and linking them back into your Google Ads. Again, if you're a little bit confused on where that lives and how to do that, feel free to reach back to us, and we will help you out with that. Right. That is my part.
Great, thank you, Andre. And I think it's like you said, the cart abandoners has been the El Dorado for a lot of people for a long time, and I really think that, like always, you should always consider the old truths. You know, is that does that still hold true today? Yeah, there's a lot of talk about cart abandoners. So I
will
will
stop sharing now.
Yeah, I can.
Fantastic.
And to summarize and share for you who are new to us at Keywordio, what we do. Let's see. I share my screen now. So what we do at Keywordio, and also like you saw in the presentation from Morten and Andre, it's really about we build technology that works on top of what e-commerce companies has today, and many times that is based on top of Google Ads. And why do we do that? So for example, last year we actually made more than 93 changes to our customers' Google Ads account, and we really believe that a combination of human plus AI is really the way of the future, because you need to have people that challenge things, like Andre said, challenge the truth about, is it cart banners that are the best to go after, that also always try and test new things and combine that with state-of-the-art technology and use the latest features. So that is really what we do. And if you would like to read more, you can also read more about the interview that Think with Google did with Morten. And yeah, Morten, you can share some bits and pieces of that interview, but you speak a lot about human to human and how to do that in the future, right?
Yes, yeah, it was an interesting piece that we did together with Google, but it was just yeah, it was a great piece on automation, and yeah, I guess my point is that we've been focusing 6 years on doing automation, but even in our company, humans are the most valuable thing we have. And I still don't think we're at a stage where we can just exclude the humans. So we are a software company, but most of the most important things I think are thought of by humans and then executed by software. So yeah, don't forget the human part of it. This is, I guess, my thought.
Exactly. And in terms of what we have managed to create in terms of results and impact, like, does it really work? So Let's Deal is one of the leading marketplaces in Sweden for time limited offers. And if you look at the different metrics that we have managed to create, we'd focus on getting revenue from new customers. We have managed to increase revenue year over year with 320% in the Google Ads channel, and we have managed to increase profitability in that channel with 27% at the same time, which is something that we are extremely proud of. And of course, it's a great collaboration with a really great team at Let's Deal, great team at our place, and like Morten said, combine that with state-of-the-art software to be able to do all these small micro changes that will push your revenue up. So
Yep.
we're super happy to share that. And now to the Q&A section. So I would like to start with you, Morten.
Yes.
And we spoke a bit about automation, and we took some great simple examples. But what do you see really is the challenge to cut the budget when you don't have all of this technology, like do it manually? What's the challenge you see there?
There's a lot of challenges, I would say. But first of all, I think that whenever you have to do changes, and let's say you need to cut your budget with 30 or 40%, do you think that you have then a meeting on a Monday and say, okay, you know what, in 5 months, we plan to cut our budgets with 40%, then you give that to the CMO and you say, okay, CMO, in 5 months you need to cut your budget with 40%. I think typically it happens, okay, COVID-19 just came around the door. All our sales are gone, or a lot of it. We need to cut. So I think doing this in a time when things are changing and that you need to act fast, but also you don't have that much time. That is a challenge one, I would call it. I think it's also important to ask yourself, well, what is it that I want to cut? Because let's say you call it branding. Now, I think that could be a great idea if you just want to get fast return on investment, but then maybe 6 months or a year down the line, your brand is taking a hit, right? And then whose problem is that then? I think it's still the company's, right? So it really depends on what you want to do. But if you just want to cut 30-40% of the cost, but you don't want to see that impact on revenue, I would cut it on branding, or for example, Facebook advertising, or push marketing on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah, and just to fill up on that as well, I really think that, for example, if I would have the CMO role and I would get the responsibility to, hey, cut fast now, and then the day when it comes to ramp up, being able to show fast progress and ramp up on the categories that have fast effect, that will probably help you to build the business case to actually get more funding to do the branding and the important stuff for the long term as well. So and Andre, if we talk about the cutting and also ramping up, but typically also, like Morten said, cutting budget with 20%, and then it takes 4 weeks, and your company where you work realize, okay, we are actually in a even worse situation. We need to cut 20% more. Like, how would you address a situation like that?
I like how you give me all the toughest questions, Jonas.
Yeah.
So, and then I anticipate that the next one is going to be how you cut another 20 on top of that. But, but jokes aside, the approach is actually going to be the same. The Swiss cheese or the rose bucket, or Swiss cheese bucket, whatever floats your boat, the logic is going to be exactly the same. In these 4 weeks, you will go back into your performance and you will see which products or channels or campaigns or keywords are not delivering up to a standard, and you will cut them out. So there will be no different approach to the first 20% to the second 20%. The logic stays the same. You're equipped with the data that you have. You see what is performing and what isn't, and you try to get rid of what is not performing first.
Yeah. And when you are down there, and hopefully it will be, let's say that you do cut in 2 sections, for example, and then you're there at the bottom, and when it comes to ramp up, like any basic logic that you would apply there to ramp up.
Yes, it's a reverse engineering kind of situation. Whatever you cut first, you enable last, kind of, right? So yeah, and also just keep in mind that you need to have the revenue flowing. Just as I mentioned, it's a very easy very easy trap to fall into. So like, I'll just cut everything, leave the most stellar performers, but if they only account for whatever 10% of the revenue that you need to survive and pay your bills, then this approach is not going to work. But I leave it to you and to your common sense to decide, of course.
Yeah, great. And Morten, we spoke about the challenges to do this great, but can you, in terms of, can you share any examples of when you have seen this is done really great and great impact on doing it efficient?
Yeah, so we have quite a number of changes that we have seen that will make an impact, right? And you can even talk about cutting budget, but you can also talk about reallocating budget, right? So I think that some clients, what we have seen is that they run on let's say 5-10 campaigns, but they actually the way they distribute the budget is not done, as I said, on a Monday meeting and say, okay, in 4 months we need to assign budgets, right? It's just done, and then it's maybe updated. And maybe your Google representative calls and says, oh, actually, you should increase your budget with 100% and so forth, right? And that's all well and fine, but if you really need to look at what is the return on investment for each campaign, and then what is this sub ad group's return on investment, and then maybe even device and so forth. So actually we have software that can go in and cut kind of from the bottom of that bucket, as Andre says, right? So let's say down here you have a very low return on investment, and then you just keep cutting 5% of what doesn't work. That could be a keyword, it could be a device, it could be whatever. And then, okay, we need to cut another 5% and see how that works, right? And at the end of the day, you actually get more fuel for your top performing keywords or places or locations and so forth. And that basically means that you are, not only are you cutting away the traffic that doesn't work, but you're actually enabling the traffic that does work, which has a tremendous impact on the whole account.
Andre, what if I have like 1,000 or 10,000 products? Like, how do I solve this for that?
Well, first things first, if you have 10,000 products, well done you. It sounds like you have a pretty solid e-commerce store, so congratulations there. And it is definitely not the best idea to do that manually, because you will spend too much time and you will probably go crazy doing that in the process. So something we don't advise. For that, just as Morten mentioned, we actually have software that utilizes the logic that we've been talking for the last half an hour, and that can do this automatically for you based on the historical data. It will get rid of low performers while giving more space for the products and campaigns that are actually delivering good results to utilize your limited budgets. So I would say if you have more than a couple of hundred, you should consider an automated solution, because otherwise it will just take too much of your time, and it will not be the word is escaping me now. Not be a great idea. Okay.
No.
Not
Great,
be sustainable. Great. That's the one I was looking for. Sorry. Yeah.
No. Thanks. On this topic, guys, do you have anything else you would like to add or expand on that we spoke about? I think it was a good note from like high level into the why with you, Morten, and the details with Andre. But any specific that you think is extra important to give the viewers away?
Well, I guess if we make, for example, 93 million changes per year, right? How would I, as a person, figure out which 5 million I shouldn't do or I should do more of, right? It's really becomes so complicated. So let's say you have one keyword, Nike shoes. Well, then you have at least 3 devices, right? So then you're up to 3 different things, right? Then you have 7 days of the week, then you're up to 21, right? Then you have how many hours of the day, right? And days of the month and so forth. So all of a sudden you get into millions of changes. So that's where I kind of gave up because I couldn't do it manually, and then we had software do it, because for software it's just a calculation, right? And that's it's like putting in a really big number and time it with another really big number, right? It would take me whatever hours to figure it out, but it takes a calculator like 0.5 seconds, right? So you really need to figure out, are you doing it because of legacy? So kind of like feeding the horses back in, I don't know, 1900, whenever the Ford T came out, or are you getting on the change and then, okay, maybe I should actually get a car, right? Because if you keep buying more horse food, let's call it, then you may be on the wrong track, right?
Yeah, great. Cool. But thank you guys for taking the time and sharing your insights and lessons learned. And we love to do this, and we typically do this like once a month, and we try to pick topics that we really see many people within e-commerce and digital marketing really thinking about. And yeah, reach out and let us know if you want us to bring up one of your subjects for the future. So with that, thank you everybody who watched, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Bye bye.